Good morning. Make sure my volume is up. How's everyone doing today on this beautiful, it's a cold Thursday, but it's a beautiful Thursday. The sun is out. My plants are thriving. I got one that's opening up. Any of y'all know how to repot plants? I have this big baby who has just flourished over the past 10 months, and I need to repot her again. I might need to break her up. Any of y'all got a green thumb? Good morning, good morning, good morning. So we will get started here shortly, of course. Um, Good morning, Nikki. Shout out to everyone on YouTube watching. Go ahead and grab your notebooks, grab your pen, grab your water. You see, I went and grabbed mine. Anything that you need, go ahead and get that. I don't see my pen. Let me grab my pen while I'm telling y'all to grab y'all pens. Good morning. There is thank you, Tia, please, because it has really been good for me to become a plant mom. I've kept, I kept most of them alive. My corn plant, not so much, but it was half dead when I got it. So, yeah, if you could find that planting class, please tag me on her page or send me her page. I would really appreciate that. Good morning, Hannah. So we're going to get started here shortly. You know, I give everyone an opportunity to get in, get settled in, move around, do what you need to do. If you could, please go ahead and share this with 3 people. Y'all know I like the number 3. There's a blessing in the number 3. So go ahead and share this with 3 people. And even tell them, like, hey, if you can't watch it now, you can always watch the replay on YouTube. All right. So thank you all for joining us. Shout out to the TikTokers. Yes, 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 yes. So I've given myself a challenge. I'm going to ask y'all, what's the challenge you've given yourself for today or for the next few days? For me, it is to post. It is to post on TikTok and on my Instagram page at least once a day. I just get so busy, and my busy really don't be busy, but it's busy. I can't even describe. It's usually I'm reading, writing, or watching a documentary, and I just lose track of time. And then when I finally do get on social media, all I want to do is scroll. I don't want to get up. I don't want to have to unwrap my hair. And I know some people do bonnets online and stuff. I can't even find my bonnet. And I could put on a hat, but I just don't be feeling like it. Sometimes I just be so relaxed. But that is my challenge for myself, is to do a post on both. Oh, Mick, I love that. You're going to read the John Grisham book, Framed. Absolutely. That is awesome. And I have another book that I'm going to share with y'all today. Let me grab it. and it's a good one with this. It's good because it goes along with our course, as well as it's like the John Grisham book Frame. This too is a nonfiction, and it tracks well with our course. It goes along with what I told you that I'm going to kind of be focusing on for us in terms of advocacy. So yeah. So Nikki, I've been watching documentaries about class action suits during the civil rights period. So I've been looking at the other stories. So typically during civil rights cases, you get like a lead name. So like you think of Brown versus Board of Education, you get the Brown family, right? You focus on Brown, but there are other cases. Or I spoke about on one of my videos, not a live, but on one of the videos, I talked about the Orange County case out in California with Hispanic and Latino families, Melendez versus Westminster. Well, that was the one family, Sylvia, the little girl, she's the face of it, and she has done all the advocacy for that story to be told. She's 88 or 89 years old now, but she was just a little girl when it took place in the 40s. However, there were other families a part of that. So I'm learning about how those cases came together to create a class. So yeah, that's the documentaries I've been watching lately. And I'm gonna go ahead and put this on YouTube. I want you all to create a banner. I want you to visit this website. I think it's, I don't even know it. So EJI, I think it's EJI. Oh, I didn't put the .org on there. My bad. I put the but not the org. But I want you all to bookmark, write down EJI.org. That is Attorney Brian Stevenson's organization, the Equal Justice Initiative. We're going to talk more about that. We're going to talk about the work that they're doing. And it all ties into, fix this hair. It all ties into, I guess, my passion, advocacy through education. You know, some people do advocacy and they're out front doing advocacy. I do my advocacy through education by informing people of things so that they can learn about it, and so that they can seek more. So when it comes to advocacy for me through education, I enjoy informing people about miscarriages of justice because that brings awareness, that brings more advocacy, that brings to light the importance of serving on a jury and why we can't just get settled into our own safety. We have to be aware of what's happening around us. All right, so it is our time to start. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome back to Federal Government. Of course, we are talking about the U.S. Constitution. Mick said, can we have a list? Y'all be working me. If you email me, I will send you a few to start with. Hey, Demi. Yes, you made it on time. But while we're in here today, I'll just think of 3. Let me write them down for you all to watch documentaries. So again, welcome. Today we are looking at the U.S. Constitution, of course. That is our text for this course. That is the text for federal government. The idea here in this course, if it's your first day, the idea here is to learn about the Constitution truly and to utilize examples of how it has been applied and how it should be applied, right? But beyond that, informing yourself, you begin to inform those around you, and educate them. You begin to have these conversations at family dinners or outings and just sharing the wealth. Knowledge is wealth. I know people say money, data, land, and they are, but don't be fooled and think that knowledge is not wealth. Knowledge will save your life when money cannot get you a way out. Hello, somebody. But I really think it's important that we empower our minds and understandings around the Constitution and really read it. I know so many people have read articles or they read something in a book, but they've never really dived into the Constitution. And I'm not approaching this like a constitutional law course, as if I were teaching a law school course on the Constitution. But I will tell you, I know that a lot of lawyers have not even read the Constitution in its entirety. They're more so focused on the amendments, and some amendments. And I know this through conversation. I know this by going to law school. People just don't read unless they find it to be a necessity. They excerpt, right? And I want to encourage you all to be able to have the duality to do both. Okay. Yeah, people, and that surprises people when I say that, that lawyers, not all lawyers have read the Constitution. That's just like, not all preachers have read the Bible. Not all people who profess to be so-called Christians, and that's a whole nother live, haven't read the Bible. Because if they did, they probably wouldn't call themselves Christians. But I ain't here to start no trouble this morning. I'm here to teach the Constitution, because somebody gonna think that's blasphemy, but it really isn't. But the truth can set you free. But yeah, so we're reading it, we're going through it, we're understanding the framework of the Constitution. That is what I'm here for. So when we look at the framework of the Constitution, and how it is taught in our public schools, how it is taught to, let me see what this light needs to go for the YouTube. How it is taught to us. Give me 1 second. How it is taught to us in our earliest development in school, right? It is taught to us in the format of there are 3 branches of government, right? And that's what we get. There are 3 branches of government. And what are they? They are the legislative, the executive, and judicial. And people never do what I told you all last week, be a kid and ask why. We don't ask why. Why do we even learn it in that order? Most people don't know it's taught to you in that order because that is the order is presented in the Constitution. The legislative branch, the executive branch, the judicial branch, right? That's just like if I asked you all about the First Amendment. Most people, if I ask them about the First Amendment, give me the rights in the First Amendment, everyone's going to shout freedom of speech. And although freedom of speech is in the First Amendment, it's not the first right. The first right is freedom of religion. And you can interpret that however you want. I have my own philosophy of the order of those rights. And it makes sense to me, and it makes sense when I share it with other people, right? So religion is first because you think before you speak, or at least you should, right? So religion, speech, right? Press, speech and press are together in the First Amendment. Then there's a semicolon, right? So we need to begin to read things in context, begin to see things as they are written. We need to go back to to our primary school years and utilize basic grammar, understand how punctuation is used, why it is used, why do we have a comma, why do we have a semicolon, all of those things. All right. Crene, religion and government are separate for multiple reasons, or have been, quote unquote, separate. And you know what? I'm going to dive into that. So let's talk about that a little bit. So if you read the First Amendment, you understand why your statement is correct. If you read the First Amendment, because it's making it very clear what Congress cannot do. Now, remember, amendments are attachments to the Constitution. Okay. So my hand is the Constitution, right? My hand is the Constitution. This ring is an amendment. Okay. This ring is an amendment. The Constitution exists. So the amendments are referring back to something about the Constitution. So when we look at the Constitution, the very first thing after the preamble is representation. And our representation comes through our legislative branch. Our legislative branch consists of two chambers, okay? Our legislative branch consists of two chambers. And this is a review. And for some of you, it's a review. For some of you, it's your first experience, right? So the two chambers are the Senate and the House of Representatives. And the only reason why I did it in that order, or I could say the House of Representatives and the Senate. And I'm using my longer finger for the House because it's the larger chamber. And then the Senate, I'm using my index finger, which is shorter than my middle finger, because it is the smaller chamber. So the House of Representatives consists of representatives based on the population of the state, whereas the Senate is based on equal representation. So every state has the same amount of representation, right? So even though you as an individual have 2 U.S. senators, you also have one member of the House of Representatives, because the House of Representatives is divided based on population of the states. So it's based on the population of where you live, your county, your city, right? Some people live in a county where there are multiple members of the House of Representatives. Like me, I live in Harris County, Texas, where Houston is located, right? Houston's the largest city in Texas, and it bounces between the 3rd and 4th largest city in the United States. So because of that, we have a lot of people here. We have a very large population. So we have a lot of representatives in the U.S. Congress that represent people in Houston, or represent people in Harris County, right? So that's the Congress from that standpoint. The thing that Congress's job is, the reason why they're called the legislative branch, we listen to that L. To legislate is to write, like literature. Legislate, you're writing, they're writing laws. So when you look at the First Amendment, so I'm gonna pivot to the First Amendment. Remember, take my ring off again. This is the Constitution. My ring represents an amendment. So I'm amending the Constitution with the First Amendment. The First Amendment is referring back to the Constitution. So Congress shall make no law is how the First Amendment starts. Congress shall make no law, right? So what should they make no law about? Let's see who, make sure my iPad is up. Let's see who has their memory caps on, who can tell me what should Congress make no law concerning. Anyone see? Anyone know? Anyone know? The establishment of religion. So Congress cannot establish religion. Thank you, Shelby. Congress shall not establish religion. So again, amendments are referring back to the Constitution, right? Or establishing something to bring it into the Constitution. That's what the amendments do. So the First Amendment is referring back to the Constitution because it's clearly stating what Congress can't do. So it's a limit. I know, Queen. I know that, and they're trying because they know that the populace is ignorant to what is in the actual Constitution. So when you're ignorant of something, you don't realize what is being taken away. And that's why we're having this course, so that people can be empowered and share wisdom and knowledge with one another, as well as make demands to their public employees who are elected employees who work in our U.S. Congress. Because what you'll find is the Congress is where your advocacy can drive change. Okay. So just stick with me. I'm woke. I'm very aware. But it's really important that I go through all the channels because not all of us have the same understanding. So I'm not going to take us fast. I'm going to take us right at the right speed, right? So, I'm not going to be slow either. I'm not going to be that person in the fast lane and the posted speed limit is 65 and they doing 57. I'm not going to be that person either. I'm probably going to go about 75, 77. Now, some people might be going 83, 90, and maybe that's just here in Houston, but I'm going to keep us not too fast, but definitely not too slow, and faster than the posted speed, because we got a lot of catching up to do. All right. So if you're just joining us, welcome back, or welcome for the first time. I feel like somebody at church. To all our visitors, please stand. But welcome to Federal Government. I am your professor, the pretty professor. This is what I do for a living. Of course, this course is designed very much differently from the course that I teach in class, simply because this is on my private time. So I get to delve more into beliefs. Whereas in class, I stay away from those, not because it's not important, but because my students are not there for my bias. My students are there for the concrete information. So here you get the concrete information, and you might get some of my bias or some of my opinion, right? And it's not to persuade you, but it is to get you to think. It is to get you to be like, that's something to take into consideration. All right. So if you're new here, please follow, please follow, like, and share. Make sure that before you leave that you click on the YouTube link on my TikTok page so that you can subscribe to the YouTube. So if ever you cannot make the live on Thursdays, that's when they're typically scheduled. Thursdays, 11:20 a.m. is when the class opens. We start at 11:30 Eastern Standard Time. If you can't make that, you can always watch the replay on YouTube. To the folks on YouTube, thank you for being here with us this morning. Yes, this is streaming simultaneously to both platforms. So if you cannot stay on TikTok for any reason, you can always turn on your YouTube and go to Pretty Petty Politics and watch it live or watch the replay. Okay. This is our way of having a plan in case something happens to this app. We still have YouTube, right? And I am working on some other things, but I'm just going to be honest with y'all. My biggest priority on this app as it comes to content is to make sure I give this class. And then given this class, I am preparing some other things like a Substack and all of that. But y'all got to take me slow because this is not my full-time job. Like, I have one of those and I'm fully engaged there. So that is where I spend most of my time preparing for and working. So anything else is just volunteer and at my leisure, outside of family, love, and community. All right. So please just be patient with me. I'm going to give you my best, but the best don't just pop up overnight. Because if I could just do this overnight, that means I'm not giving you the real. I'll probably give you some artificial stuff that I haven't dug into myself. I'm relying on someone else to give it to me. All right. So hopefully y'all caught that, what I just said. All right. I ain't going to give y'all my opinion about AI. AI. Drink some water. All right. So back to that First Amendment. So Congress shall make no law establishing, respecting an establishment of religion. The reason why it says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion is because that's what Congress does. It establishes laws. So it's at the top, the framers, right? When James Madison wrote this amendment and conferred with those around him, and the Congress received this amendment along with other amendments that would form the Bill of Rights. When they received them and they voted on them, right? The House and the Senate voted on them, then the states had to ratify them, right? They understood, probably based on their own experience dealing with the crown, right, that it was critical that religion not be legislated to the people. Because how was King James, yes, the one that ordered a version of the Bible be named for him, right? So because King James and the Church of England, they legislated jointly, right? And these people in the 1780s, when this is going through, yes, not like the Church of England, the Church of England, as this was going through, they understood the history, right? So that is why so often when I am explaining things, I will refer back to something historical because we can't forget the history. So you have to put things in place to prevent the history from repeating itself. But because too many people are now so far away from understanding and recalling or ever knowing the history, that is why, to Queen's earlier point, people now are catching on to the attempts by nationalists to change the framework of the Constitution because they know the masses seemingly are ignorant of the why. Remember being a 3-year-old asking why? The why behind the First Amendment being written the way it was. Okay? Right? So we have what we call religious freedom. That's not just religious freedom in terms of it is, but it's not. So it is so you can practice what you want, if anything at all or nothing at all, right? It is for that. But it's also saying that the government, Congress, the legislative branch, the one who writes laws, shall not make, it literally says Congress shall make no law. It's mandatory that Congress make no law, shall, mandatory. It is mandatory that Congress make no law respecting an establishment of religion or, see, it's a comma and a or, prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So not only can they not create religion, they cannot prohibit it. So baby, if your belief is in this glass of water, whether it's cold or room temperature, right? This is the cold, this is room temperature. If this is what you believe in, Congress cannot prohibit you from believing in these glasses of water. All right. Does that make sense? You can believe in, like I use with students, the spaghetti monster. I never heard of it till a student told me that like 7 years ago and gave me the background. I was like, oh, the spaghetti monster. But if that's what you choose to believe in, that's what you can believe in. Like, you can't be prohibited. Some people believe in the bottom of a bottle of whiskey. If that's what they believe in, that's on them. That's their business. What you believe in is your business, right? And what you don't believe in is your business. So whether it is the Lion of Judah or the lion wig, whatever you believe in, that's for you. That's for you to decide. Okay, that is for you to decide. All right. Here goes some questions. All right. Could that be why they're trying to do it? They're the executive branch. So again, there is one branch that legislates, that writes laws. An executive order is not a law. Let me repeat that. An executive order is not a law. It can have the effect of a law, but it is not a law. All right? It is not a law. I need y'all to understand that. An executive order is not a law. It could have the effect of a law, but it is not a law. Executive orders have been used since George Washington was president. Every president has used executive orders. Many executive orders are stopped because they do not pass muster with the Constitution. So there can be judges, federal judges that make rulings about executive orders. There can be Supreme Court decisions. There have been 5 on executive orders. Okay. And Congress can stop executive orders. Executive orders, don't y'all get, how can I put this? Don't miss what you have because you're paying attention to a distraction. Distractions keep you hyper and going crazy with other things instead of focusing on the main thing. Okay. Now, for all of you asking questions right now, I'm thinking you're probably new to this space. So let me help you. There will be a time for questions and I will literally go through and answer them, but I got to be able to teach. And so this is why I don't bring people on camera with me when we're on these lives, is because it becomes distracting, right? It becomes distracting. So if you would allow me, the professor, like the actual professor, not just on here on TikTok calling myself a professor, the actual professor of government, of political science, of this Constitution, let me do the professing, the teaching, and then we'll pause and take questions. Okay? Because it becomes distractive. And I'm telling you this because I've gotten messages about the distractions when people don't just let the class go, right? I didn't think I had to tell adults this, but I'm gonna let y'all teach. Since y'all in the chat teaching, I'm gonna let y'all teach. Y'all teaching. I'm gonna let y'all teach. I'm gonna talk to the folks on YouTube. So hey, YouTube, because TikTok just want to do what TikTok do. I don't know if it's folks who aren't supposed to be in my class right now. I don't know. But I'm gonna just teach. So let's go back to the Congress. So last week, as we finished class, we visited Article 4 of the Constitution, right? Hey, we visited Article 4 of the Constitution, where in Article 4, we're dealing with states. So Article 1, 2, and 3 are dealing with the federal government. So we've established what the federal government is, the makeup, right? The core of the federal government, right? We've established that, right, through Articles 1, 2, and 3. So now it's like, oh, the states. Let's address what the states should be doing, what the states should or should not be doing, and who's going to kind of give them parameters around that. And let's kind of deal with the things that the state consists of, right? The states. So at the time, the states, when this is happening, the states are the 13, what were formerly the 13 colonies become the states. And then the country continuously grows, right? The nation continuously grows until what we have present day today, the 50 states, right? But the responsibility or the parameter setter over the states is still established in the Congress. Again, the Congress has so much power. So when we look at Article 4, Article 4 begins with full faith and credit clause. Are y'all finished talking amongst yourselves? Y'all ready to listen to me on TikTok? Because I'm gonna do what I do. All right. If you ready to follow me and let me teach, go ahead and say teach, girl, teach. Teach, sis, teach. All right. Go on and put that in the chat because y'all like to type a lot on TikTok. But I'm gonna keep talking to YouTube because YouTube, y'all be in there. All right. I'm gonna keep going. So Article 4 starts with the full faith and credit clause. Do y'all recall that last week? The full faith and credit clause in Article 4 of the Constitution. You know what? I need to pull up. Give me a second. I did something to my iPad, so all my tabs that I previously had open are closed. So I need to pull back up my resources. Constitution, there we go. And if you want to follow along with the Constitution directly and know that you have an actual legitimate copy of the Constitution, I would tell you to visit law.cornell.edu/Constitution. Okay. law.cornell, cornell.edu/Constitution. And they have it broken down. This is Cornell Law School, by the way. All right. So when we look at Article 4 of the Constitution, it states in Section 1, full faith and credit shall be given in each state to the public acts, records, and judicial proceedings of every other state. And the Congress may by general laws prescribe set parameters, prescribe the manner in which such acts, records, and proceedings shall be proved and the effect thereof. So Congress kind of oversights, right? Congress kind of provides some framework of oversight as it relates to how states relate to one another. Now, we've used examples of this. Last week I gave you 2 marriage cases. I'm about to give you the third case, right? But we used 2 marriage cases last week to describe how Article 4 can be impacted or applied, one more than the other. So Oberfeld versus Hodges, 2015, and we also talked about Loving versus Virginia, 1967 or 8. I can't remember, but Loving versus Virginia too. All right. The third case is a marriage case. It's not necessarily an Article 4 case. All right. But both of these, or all 3 of these, relate to an amendment, my favorite, which y'all y'all don't learn nothing else in this class, if you don't learn nothing else in this class, you need to learn the power of Congress and you need to learn the 14th Amendment. If you don't get nothing else out of this class, and I'm not just talking about today, I'm talking about this entire course, the 14th Amendment and the power of Congress. All right. So as you see, I told you Article 4 is mostly driven by how states interact, but you see the influence, the impact, the effect, the power of Congress. Congress, the reason why I think, especially people in the Senate, and this is gonna sound so ugly, it might. People in the Senate kind of are like confident people, they know who they are. And then you have people, and so it's not like it's their first time ever going out to dinner. Like, I've been to dinner before. I know to put my napkin on my lap and to place the silverware on the table next to my left. Let's just say to my left, right? Because it may not be a plate there, but I know to put my napkin on my lap. Whereas sometimes to me, it's like people in the house, they got their knife. I'm gonna use these vitamins. They got their knife and their fork, and they're like, yeah, I'm ready to eat. And their elbows are on the table, and they're just so rowdy. They're just so happy to be there. You know, they're not paying attention to the room. They're not reading the room, right? Because they're so happy to have power. They know the power exists, but they're not willing to engage the responsibility that comes with the power, because they're just so happy to finally have some. That don't mean that the Senate ain't full of two, but I'm just saying. And the reason why I'm saying this is when you look at the character and the behavior that we're seeing in the Congress, right, in the House of Representatives, oh, Katie, y'all want Katie out of here. Let me help her. Y'all just give me a second. Okay. She's gone. She won't be back. All right. Don't y'all let them little boogers bother y'all. I got it. We had a troll in the classroom. That's how we boot people. All right. All right. And if they come back, we'll just boot them some more. So when we look at the House of Representatives, a lot of times you hear them say things and you begin to dig into their background and you understand why they say things that they say, because they're not focused on the responsibility. They're only focused on the power, right? And not to say the Senate's not the same. I just feel like the House is more hyper. Anyway, I done got off topic. Let me go back to what I was saying. So when we look at Section 1, we see that Congress has power over the states and influence. When we look at Section 2, it tells us something about what we get, right, as citizens, what we get as citizens, okay? Citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of the citizens in several states, okay? Citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. What are privileges and immunities? We hear this here in the Constitution, but we're going to also see it there in the amendments to the Constitution. In my favorite amendment, you will see that, okay? Got that? Everyone got that? Privileges and immunities. All right. Then Section 2 goes into talking about extradition. All right. Extradition. Hopefully y'all have read this. I've assigned this to be read a while ago. All right. But when we get into section 3, do I need to go over section 2? Just tell me if I need to go over section 2. We're on Article 4, Nikki. My apologies. Yes, I need to go over it. Section 2. Okay. A person charged in any state with treason, felony, or other crime who shall flee from justice and be found in another state shall, on demand of the executive authority of the state from which he fled, that's a whole mouthful, be delivered up to be removed to the state having jurisdiction of the crime. Congress, or the framers wrote this article because it's foreseeable that people will commit crimes and go somewhere else. Now, let me put on my study hat and tell you how common a rule such as this is, or a rule related to this is. If you go to the Old Testament of the Bible, I believe in the book of Deuteronomy, it tells you about a crime. If someone commits, it gives an example, like, and I'm using this word, it may not be exact, but like, say someone accidentally kills someone, and because they killed them, they're scared and they run off to another town, right? That person shall not be put to death, right? But will they have to answer? Yes. But if someone intentionally does it and runs, then they must be ordered up, so to speak, back to the place where the crime happened so that they can be dealt with legally. Okay. Legs, is there a way we can access the article syllabus? So yes, I'm pause, y'all. I got a good question. I want them to be able to use our materials. So Legs, I need you to do me a favor. Right now, I want you to go to Pretty Petty. I want you to leave this live on TikTok, and I want you to go to YouTube, Legs. On YouTube, I want you to go to Pretty Petty Politics, subscribe, and then under the description, there's a Google form. I want you to complete that Google form. Okay? I want you to complete that Google form. I also want you to go to _the Pretty Professor. Somebody put that in the chat. _ the Pretty Professor on Instagram. There on Instagram is like 4 or 5 links. One of those links is the U.S. Constitution. I want you to utilize that. That is our textbook for this course. The actual Constitution to the United States is our textbook. We're at Article 4. Article 4 is IV because they're using Roman numerals. Okay. The syllabus, you will get that information when you open up that Google form. It will tell you what we're covering. Okay. All right. Y'all put me to work. Pin this comment. All right. Thank you, King's Corner. I've pinned that. All right. And thank you all. Those of you who are just joining us, thank you. Those instructions that I just gave, you can go to the YouTube, or you can do it now, or you can do it after this live ends. But you go to the YouTube or to _ the Pretty Professor, and you get all the materials for the course. Make sure you register for the course using the Google form. That way you get a weekly email from me with details about the previous class, including referring you back to the recording on YouTube, as well as what's the next discussion. All right, what's the next discussion? All right, now that we've cleared up those housekeeping things, back to the Constitution. So I gave you that biblical example, just not to have Bible study. I mean, we can, but not to have Bible study, but more so to show you that this was not an uncommon concept about extradition, right? It's not uncommon. It's not unheard of. It wasn't a foreign idea. It's pretty much a humanitarian ideology that if someone does something, they should be brought to the place where the accused or believed to be crime or situation occurred. All right. So in last week's lecture, I said _ the Pretty Professor. _ the Pretty Professor. All right. _ the Pretty Professor. All right. So I'll pin it again. So it's pinned. No, that's not it. THE. Y'all didn't write it right, and I'm reading too fast. Somebody else type it so I can get it. All right. Somebody else type it. And let me respond to this text. Y'all give me 1 second. YouTube, and TikTok. So you remember last week I told you about a case. I told you about a case, and I told you to look it up. Out of Baytown, Texas, a 2017 case, and the young lady's name was Sierra Sutton. Y'all remember that? So that's what we're going to look at as an example of extradition. You know, hopefully you all looked that up, watched a video about her, and then we talked about Lulu. Extradition is not uncommon, right? It's not uncommon. Extradition is not uncommon. It's very familiar. It's used all the time. It's used because it's prescribed in Article 4 of the Constitution. All right. But what do those words mean? What does it mean to, on the demand of the executive authority of the state from which he fled? That means we live in counties and parishes. Well, Louisiana lives in parishes, but we live in counties here in the United States, right? So your county has an attorney, because every county is different. Not everybody has the same title, but they may have the same responsibility. So I'm gonna be careful with the language that I use. So I'm just being descriptive. Every county has a county prosecutor that prosecutes crime. All right. And county prosecutors, here we call them district attorneys. Most places call them district attorneys. But every county has a county prosecutor that deals with criminal actions. They deal with crime and they prosecute crimes, right? They do the prosecution or the oversight of prosecution of crimes, not just on behalf of the county itself, but on behalf of the state, because the laws that are being broken are state laws. So they're doing it on behalf of their state. Okay. So they are the executive authority in that county representing the state. That is why when someone is charged with a crime, right? If it's not a federal crime, when they are charged with a crime and that lawsuit, right? That lawsuit against them for their crime, it says the state of Texas or the state of Oklahoma, the state of Virginia versus the criminal, or excuse me, not the criminal, versus the criminally accused person. Let me say that, because not everybody who was indicted or accused is actually the criminal for that particular crime in which they are being accused of. All right. So hopefully that is connecting. So your district attorney, okay? So here we talked about having an accelerated course to do state, like local government. So let me just give you a tidbit. Let me find a clock. Oh, it's a clock here. That is, charge this computer. That is the most powerful that is the most powerful seat in your county, is who your county prosecutor is. Okay. It used to be that your county sheriff, and in some areas it's still your county sheriff, especially if you're in a rural area. your county sheriff has a lot of power. They may have power and influence over the prosecutor. But in general, I would argue that the prosecutor is the most powerful, because their influence and the power that they can wield, right, across the populace of the county can really set precedents and impact lives. Okay. So that executive authority. So on demand of that executive authority. So when Sierra Sutton was the number one suspect in the murder, and because she killed him to death. I don't know if y'all read up on it. Y'all read up on it? If you read up on it, put Baytown in the chat, so I know you know what we're talking about, right? But when she murdered him, she pew-pewed, right? When she pew-pewed him, that wasn't enough for her. She took a machete and made chopped liver. Okay? All right? When she pew-pewed, she made chopped liver. Thank you for reminding me to watch my... It's so hard because, you know, I like to use the real word, because if you don't use the real word and use these makeup words, but y'all know what I'm talking about. All right? She pew-pewed and then she chop. So she killed him to death. So she was the number one suspect for a myriad of reasons, because she had reported a missing, but when they went to her apartment, it was like, well, whatever happened to him here. Clearly. So that's why she was the number one suspect. And as the number one suspect, she left, not just left town or just left Harris County. And Baytown is about 35-40 minutes southeast of Houston, right? Not only did she leave Harris County, she left the state of Texas and she fled to Louisiana. So the district attorney, right? The crime happened in Baytown. Baytown is a county in Harris County. So the Harris County attorney, along with the law enforcement there in Baytown, right? They demanded, so the police would demand it through the DA, and the DA would work with the DA and the police chief, or the detectives reach out to the place where they think she is, want to give them warning that this person, this very dangerous, and someone may want to say cray person, is believed to be in your community, and this is what they did in our community. So if you could take her into custody, hold her for us, we'll come get her from you, take her off your hands and bring her back to Texas. Don't mess with Texas. We'll bring her back to Texas where she can be prosecuted for the crime we believe that the heinous crime that we believe she committed. Okay. That makes sense? All right. All right. So that is an example. You know, I want to show you application. That is an example. Now, that is one example. Then we have Lulu, right? Luigi, Super Mario Brother, right? We got Lulu and what Lulu did. Lulu no lemon, right? Lulu committed a crime in New York. Okay? Committed a crime in New York, allegedly. Right? And fled, allegedly, to Pennsylvania. While in Pennsylvania, Lulu, two things happened. They had that picture of Lulu. There's a detective out in San Francisco who recognized Lulu from some pictures Lulu's mom had sent to San Francisco because they thought he was missing. So his mother was looking for her son, and the last place she knew he was in San Francisco. So when that detective who had that file saw that image that they had put on the news when they were on the manhunt, he called and was like, hey, That looks a lot like this guy. He going through his Instagram and everything. He looked like a lot like this guy who's supposed to be this missing person. I think it's Lulu. So we don't know this is going on, the public, but law enforcement is working cooperatively with one another. So law enforcement already has an idea of who they're looking for. So what happens in the McDonald's when the person spots him and thinks like, I think this is, and calls law enforcement picks him up. It is believed that he is the alleged unaliver person, because I don't know what word to use right now because this app monitoring our words, but the person who pew-pewed, oh gosh. All right, because this is the believed person who pew-pewed, we're going to take him into custody here in Pennsylvania. New York authorities are going to come and remove this suspect from our custody and return him to the place where the crime occurred. Extradition comes from Article 4, Section 2. Okay? You're going to see more extradition. It's not uncommon. Happens all the time. Daily, we have extraditions. Okay? Daily. All right. So, Section 3 deals with states. Last week, I gave the example of if Jerry Jones wanted to create the state of Cowboy, and he carved out an area that attached to multiple states. All of those state legislators could agree, like legislatures could agree that, yes, we're okay with this, losing this corner of our states to create a 51st state. They could all agree. Jerry Jones could think that he is on his way, but Congress could say, no, Jerry, we don't think so. We don't want a state of Cowboy. So no, we're not going to go along with it. Even though our constituents in those areas think it's a good thing representing those 4 states, the rest of us don't. And so you're not going to get the votes. So that will not be added as a new state. Or it could be the reverse. Congress could be like, yes, Jerry Jones, you can have the state of Cowboy created out of Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, and Louisiana. All right. Just north and just south of I-20. Okay. All right. So hopefully that gives you some idea. All right. But there you see the role of Congress. So you see the role of Congress in Section 1, and you see it again in Section 3. Congress is in everything. When we look at Section 4, it's very specific to the United States. It says the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union. Now let me lean in. In this union. This is a union. This union is a Republican form of government. And I got to take this slow. We are a democracy and we are a Republican form of government. Because so many people slept through social studies class, probably because they had a coach who wasn't good at teaching social studies, or because they came about after the No Child Left Behind Act, so they really never learned much of anything, or they were literally just asleep because they just were sleepy. Most people do not understand a Republican form of government and a democracy are not the same as a Republican political party and a Democratic political party, such as the Republican Party of the United that we have here in the United States, the Democratic Party that we have in the United States. And I just want you all, my students, my beloveds, I want you to know that they are not the same. I hate that I have to say it, but I need to say it, okay? Okay. So once we get through the Constitution, we'll talk about the various forms of government, okay? Yeah, they did it at the beginning of class. I just didn't want to say anything because I want to keep us focused on what's happening in class. That's why in my in-person class, we don't have no devices out unless I tell you, take out your devices and look up something, because we don't want no distractions. We want to learn. All right. So we have a Republican form of government. That is what our union is. Our union. Our union, like the 50 states, we're in it. We're in a union. So like during the Civil War, when those states broke away, they didn't break away from air. They broke away from the union. They broke away from the union. Y'all get that? They broke away from the union. The union remained the union. We've been taught to say North and South. I need you to know it's the union. Okay? So they broke away from the union and formed their Confederate states. Now, we're going to talk about Reconstruction. We're going to talk about Civil War later. Okay? We'll talk about that later. It's federal government. This is a federal government course, Mary. We welcome you to stay and to learn. If you can't stay, you can always visit us, Pretty Petty Politics, on YouTube for the replay. Thank you, Roselle, for the crown. That was cute. Thank you. All right. All right. So let me continue with section 4. All right. The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion. Sound familiar? Last week's lecture. And on application of the legislature or of the executive, when the legislature cannot be convened against domestic violence. That's why it's important to read the Constitution, so you know who has power and who has responsibility, or when one can exert certain powers. Okay. All right. So that is section 4. That is Article 4, all 4 parts. Okay. So we've gotten through Article 4. All right. So now I'm going to pause and answer questions. So if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. We've gone an hour. YouTube, what questions do you all have on YouTube? Go ahead and put them in the chat. I'm going to answer 4 questions. Hopefully 2 of them can be quick, and then I'll reserve 1 to include later, and then I'll answer 1 directly in full. All right. Can Congress cancel contracts? That's loaded. And that's not a answer. That's not a question. Let me put it this way. Yes, but that's the answer to that. Yes, but, or yes, when. Like there's so many circumstances and so much that could be added to that. So there's no specificity to that. But yes, but. Okay. What do it mean exact if legislature can't be convened? So the legislature is not convened, meaning they're not seated at the Capitol, the U.S. Capitol, then the president can respond to domestic invasion. So again, section 4 is okay. This is 1 sentence. Okay. This is why I go back to punctuation. This is 1 sentence. That's the first thing I want to say. So the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government and shall protect them against invasion, semicolon. So now we're going to talk about what that looks like. Okay. So if the legislature, right, our lawmaking body, our body that declares war, our body that has that power, if they're not seated at the Capitol, if they're not convened in session, then the president, and it doesn't say then, it says or of the executive, and the executive can do it when the legislature is not in place. I hope that makes sense. What can we do as a country to help get a person that do not have a position? Tarsha, I need you to restate that question. What protections against restrictions of the freedom of the press? Star, I need that question cleared up. It's put it in context. I don't understand the question. Please explain the religious freedom since native religion was illegal until the 70s. Kai, I don't understand your question either. Since you can believe what you want to believe, you can worship what you want to worship. Congress cannot prohibit you from having a religion, and they can't create a religion. Now, were there restrictions on certain practices? I'm sure there have been. Just like Black people weren't supposed to do things and we were killed for it, right? It doesn't stop what the Constitution says. So I want y'all to be clear about one thing. I'm explaining what the Constitution says. I'm not explaining what has been done to people unconstitutionally in the United States. I can't do both in this class in one session. I have to give the foundation and then we go from there. So that's what we're doing. But let me write that down, Kyle. Matter of fact, let me screenshot it. Okay. So I got that screenshot. I'll come back to it later, especially if you remind me. All right, let's look at what does it mean? Okay. I got you. Hopefully I explained it. So if Congress is not in session, then the president can give the order, so to speak. Okay. That's not prohibiting press though. For instance, the AP was restricted from the White House briefing room and told, yeah. So the AP has taken a position on the way it's going to do its reporting, and the White House is mad about it. So they're throwing a tissy, not allowing the AP from being present to cover White House pressers, right? That doesn't stop the AP from reporting, though. It does not stop them from being the press. It stops them from having access to the White House. And the White House can keep anybody out of the White House. But it's really because they're throwing a tantrum because the AP, the Associated Press, won't acquiesce to bend over and take whatever the White House wants. That's that, Star. DOJ has not been established by Congress. Only Congress can create departments. If the U.S. gets invaded, no war would have to be declared. President is charged with DE. I don't know what you're saying, user. All right. Yep, Marion. Baby, he don't have to be in the White House to take it. It's took. It's took. You would have had to prevent that back in November, beloved. That's why we resting. I mean, but you in the room. I mean, you can watch the press conference online. Not the press conference, but when the young lady comes out there and says whatever she gonna say. Pretty petty politics, Stephanie. Pretty petty politics. But on my homepage here on TikTok, you'll see the link to the YouTube and you can go right to that. So no questions, no further questions on YouTube. It's been about 5 minutes. I'll take one more question. Not you, Tamarsha. I'm just, oh, look at those glasses. That's cute. Not you, Tamarsha. I'm saying the only way to have stopped that was to have stopped that. Not you personally. All right. All right. All right. So no more questions. What is the percentage of literalists and contextualists in the Supreme Court? Girl, I don't know. I'm not on the Supreme Court. I don't know. And people can say they one way or the other. I hope they're using both. And that's something that we talked about in here last week. We've got to use both. It helps with critical thinking. You got to put things into context, and you got to look at things for how they were presented. And when you look at things for how they were presented, then you still put them in context, because you have to look at the historical significance of when it was written. All right. And a lot of times, if it doesn't speak to something, then there's a loophole so other things can come in. So you better say what you mean and mean what you say. Because if you don't put anything else in it before you put that period, now you've left open an opportunity for other things to be applied to it. All right. But Susie Q, I don't know that exact answer. I don't think anyone will ever know that exact answer. Don't be afraid, Davita. Be bold, be empowered, and be knowledgeable. Yes, Tessa, yes. Conflict of interest between president and business. If you're doing things, if you're making decisions to enrich yourself, that's a conflict of interest. You're utilizing your power to enrich yourself. You're taking advantage of taxpayer money to enrich yourself. That's a conflict of interest. This is not a private company. This is a nation. And I'm not going to go into that whole thing. Well, the Virginia company, let's deal with things in context. What is it meant to have a constitutional crisis? One part of a constitutional crisis is not having knowledge. And because the employer does not know the roles, responsibility, and duties of the employees, we are in a crisis. Because if we knew better, we'd do better. We'd be raising hell. And Congress would be acting like they boss about to fire them. But because they know we lazy as a populace, they just do what they want to do or what they're being told to do as individually. Because some people are probably being told what to do. They are bought. They're not like Shirley Chisholm. They're not unbought and unbossed. Some of them are bought by corporations and oligarchs. So that's why we're having this class, so we can learn the Constitution. We can share the Constitution and just encourage it, and so that we can pick up our pens or our devices or our car keys and drive to our congresspersons, our representatives, and our senators' local offices and make our demands known, so that we can call their offices and make our demands known. So we can call them out on social media, adding them, so that we can pop up where they are and advocate for our communities and let them know what we won't stand for. A third of the U.S. Senate is up for re-election in 2026. That means as early as late January of 2026, primary elections will begin. Okay, primary elections will begin in early 2026. You need to vote in primary elections so you can determine who will be on the ballot for the general election in November 2026. 2026 is what we call a midterm election year. Okay, Shell, I'm about to, you better ask me a real question or I'm about to boot you out of this class because I think you trolling. How do you vote in a primary? What state do you live in, Atandra? Atandra, what state do you live in? Tell me real quick so I can tell you how it's done. Connecticut. So I want you to go to Google. As a matter of fact, I'll do it for you right here. When is the Connecticut primary. Said, how do we vote in the primary? The first thing, it depends on your state. So, like in Texas, some states have open primaries, some people have closed primaries. A closed primary means that you have already declared your party. So in Texas, when you register to vote, you're just registering to vote. Your voter registration does not ask you which political party are you registering as. You're just registering as a voter. In some states, you register under a party specifically when you register to vote. Now, to not belabor this, I'm just going to go ahead and explain it in general, and then you can look it up for your individual state. So in Texas, when I registered to vote, I was a registered voter in Texas. If I go to a primary to vote, primaries happen before the general election. So a primary may have 30 people running for one office, right? It may have 30 people on the ballot for Republican and 70 people on the ballot for Democrat. Whoever gets the most votes in that primary for each party will then go on and be the candidate on the general election ballot. Okay. Now, when I go into the polling place as a registered voter in Texas, I can choose during a primary, do I want the ballot for the Republican candidates or do I want the ballot for the Democrats? I have to choose. At that moment, that is where you declare. So when you're going into the place, don't let nobody be like, go this way. You decide which ballot you want to vote on if you have an open primary like we do in Texas. So like next year, depending on who's running for U.S. Senate, I might ask for a certain party's ballot because I want to persuade who will end up on that on the general election ballot. Damn what the other party's doing. I'm trying to persuade. I'm trying to have some shift, some impact of a shift in a certain party to ensure that another candidate damn sure don't make the ballot in November. Okay. But if it's a closed primary, then, and you want to do that same thing that I just described, then you have to change your voter registration to be able to, well, you may have to change your voter registration so that you can vote in that party's primary. So it depends on if your state has an open or a closed primary. Okay. So let me look at, and then I can provide it to you, what states have open primaries. Oh, here's a website. Uh-oh. All right. So I'm coming to your question, HR. I'm coming to you next, and then that's going to be it. Some of these websites. All right. So open primaries. All right. Open primaries: Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Hawaii, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri, North Dakota, Ohio, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Vermont, Virginia, and Wisconsin. Closed primaries, semi-closed primaries: Arizona, Colorado, Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, North Carolina, Rhode Island. So what it says for semi-closed primaries: voters registered with a political party may only vote in that party's election. However, if you're unaffiliated, that means you haven't declared a party, then you can choose. Closed primary states: Connecticut, but it does allow unaffiliated voters. Voters can only vote in the primary election of the party they are registered as. So if you're a registered Democrat in the primary, you can only vote on the Democratic Party primary ballot. So your candidates that you're voting on in the primary are only those, and it's restricted. You don't get to choose because you've registered, you've declared as that party or Republican, either way. Okay. States may or may not allow unaffiliated voters to vote in a primary election. So if you're not declared a Republican or a Democrat, like when you register to vote, you did not declare either party, then you're what they consider an unaffiliated voter. And in Connecticut, as an unaffiliated voter, you have the state legislature or the state of Connecticut allows unaffiliated voters to choose. So you can choose that day at the primary which way you want to vote. Do you want the Republican ballot, or do you want the Democratic ballot? And then that ballot, it'll have all the elections that primary candidates are facing off. So let me explain what a primary is, though. A primary isn't Republican versus Democrat. That's not what it is. A primary is all the people running to be on the general election ballot. So, you know, at the general election, you have a list. You'll have, if there's a, how can I put it? Typically, or oftentimes, it'll have the incumbent first, or it'll have the incumbent with an I next to their name to let you know they're already in office if the incumbent is not defeated in the primary, right? But they'll have all of the people who have made the cut. So like when we voted for president in November, it had all the candidates running for president. It had Vice President Kamala Harris. It had Donald J. Trump. It had Jill Stein. It had all of the people running for president who had qualified for your state, right? Who had qualified to be on your state's ballot. Because I don't remember seeing Cornel West on my ballot here in Texas, because some people don't meet the basic requirements to appear on the ballot. Okay, that's a whole nother conversation. We're gonna leave this. This is gonna be our big question. So they don't always meet the requirements, but it'll have all the people, regardless of their party. They're all listed. That is the general election. The general election is where you're making the final decision of who's actually going to take that office. The difference between a general election and a primary election is, in the primary election, you're determining who's going to have an opportunity to even compete for that final position. So, let's take 2020 primary, right? So in the 2020 primary, you had Bernie Sanders, you had Elizabeth Warren, you had Joe Biden, you had all these people on the Democratic ticket, right? And so in the primary, you went and voted for the person you wanted. So let's say I went and I voted for Elizabeth Warren. I wanted Elizabeth Warren to be the person we're choosing from come November. All right. That's what you're essentially doing. Okay. So the person who wins the most primaries are the presumed general election candidate. Although what happens is, dang, y'all got me off topic. But it was a good question. Then what happens is we get to conventions, right? Political parties have these big conventions, and the delegates from your county and your state, they convene at that convention and they declare where they pledge those delegate votes to. So which candidate they pledge those votes to. Sometimes they're split depending on how your state party rules are drawn up. So hopefully me going down this whole line has given you some insight. So for you, Atandra, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly, in Connecticut, they have closed primaries, except for if you are an unaffiliated voter, you can choose which primary. So you need to check to see when is the last day to register to vote in Connecticut for the 2026 primary. And then you need to make sure that you're registered as a specific political party member, or you're registered just as an unaffiliated. So if you want to just have one choice, then you register as a party for Connecticut, right? This is for Connecticut voters because that's who asked the question. If you want to have a choice of which one you'll vote on, because you're in a closed primary state, then you need to make sure your voter registration is as an unaffiliated voter. You don't just declare it. It has to actually be on the registration. All right. So that was the last big question. Does it say on your voter registration if you are a Republican or Democrat? Because I don't think I have declared either. It depends on your state, Katie. It depends on your state. Every state is different. There is no uniformity, and it should not be a uniformity. It should be what the state desires. We start saying, well, uniformity, you might get screwed. So let's be clear. All right. So because you're declared as a Democrat, you would have only the candidates that are who have filed to run for those specific offices that are becoming vacant. You will only be able to vote for a Democrat. So Katie, you're in Texas. So no, we're an open primary state. So it doesn't matter. We don't declare when we register to vote. Our voter registration form does not require a declaration when you register to vote. All right. So that was really good. Shout out to Atandra out of Connecticut. That's one of my favorite states. Beautiful, beautiful place. Rich history. Love to visit. Love it. So shout out to you. Thank you for that question. All right. If y'all enjoyed that, please, please, please. We spent about 25 minutes in Q&A. Go ahead and like, share. Make sure you're following, right? Make sure you're following. Make sure you go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube page, Pretty Petty Politics. You can always catch the replays of these lives on our YouTube page, okay? All right. Yes. Thank you for the follows. Please follow. Please share. Please tag someone. All right. Pat, make sure you watch the rest of the live. You go back and watch the recording on YouTube. Y'all ready for this last, I guess about 45 minutes? All right. Let's get going. So we've talked about Article 4. We've talked about Articles 1, 2, 3, and 4. Article 5 is about amendments. Now, I think I did a video about amendments. I think there's a video on my TikTok page about amendments. So if not, I'll do one. I don't want to just do it here. I would much rather do it as one that anybody can go back and watch on TikTok. But let's talk about Article 5. So amendments are, I'm going to keep it brief. Article 5 deals with amendments. Amendments come through the Congress. Remember, the whole reason why Congress exists is so that the people have representation, because the people did not have proper representation with the Articles of Confederation, which was exposed by our good brother Daniel Shea. Okay, everybody got that? I don't have to retract. I shouldn't have to, every time we come in here, give the replay of what happened before. I want you all to go, if you have not watched the other videos, go ahead and watch this one, but then go back and watch the others so that you'll have the information to follow along. Also, make sure you register for the course. That way you get our emails, and make sure that you write your email. Every time I send emails, I get like 6 rejects, and it's because y'all misenter your information, because I'm not retyping. I'm literally copying and pasting it. And y'all leave out y'all underscores. Y'all misspell it. Like, come on, take your time and enter your information so that you can get this rich lecture, so you get this information that I have. All right. So Kay Michelle, which videos? All of our lives are on the YouTube page for Pretty Petty Politics, so you can go back and watch them. Also, I do like blurred videos that are on my page. So because I'm at work and I'm in Texas and I can't use TikTok I can use it in my personal time, but I can't use it during work time. And I'm doing this now. I'm making sure that I'm separating the two. So I just don't have the time to be posting videos. I'm going to do better. But there are some videos on my page that you can refer to. And then when I'm at home, I'll be tired, child. I'll be trying to teach. I done taught all day. But there are some videos on my page. Yes, Pretty Petty Politics. That's what I said. It has a pink and blue logo of a lady, like a lady justice holding the scales. Okay. Kind of sassy. All right. So let's look at Article 5. Article 5 deals with the amendment process. Okay. Who's in charge of the amendment process? Could y'all guess? Who do y'all think it is? Who do we keep talking about? We keep talking about Congress, right? Because Congress has so much power, but you keep getting distracted by 1600. So let me give you some perspective. You know, no shade to the brothers, no shade to men, because the truth is what it is, right? But when you look at how we design things, not just in the structure of our government through the document of the Constitution, but if you've ever visited Washington, D.C., absolutely one of my favorite places. I always say if I weren't here, I would move back to the DMV because I love the DMV, particularly Virginia, but I love the district too. But when you look at the DMV in DC and you ever visit like the National Mall, and so you're riding down the street in your Uber or your Lyft or your rental car or however you're being transported, taxi, or you're walking, you'll notice the memorials, right? You have the Lincoln Memorial at one end. You have the, gosh, I lost my word. What's the tall thing? I can't even think of it right now. You got that in the middle. Then you got the Capitol building at the other end. And you got museums along the way. You have like the Korean War. She said the big pencil. You have the Korean War Memorial. You have the MLK Memorial. Yeah, the National Mall. I know it's the National Mall, but I'm talking about what's the big thing, the big monument, the National Monument. That's what it is, the tall one. I can't think of the name of it. Anyway, you see all these things, but that might be it. That might be it. All right, but you'll see the White House. So if you're facing the Capitol, right, you're facing the Capitol. To your left is the White House. To your right is the National Mall. Okay, that's how many times I've been there. I know, right? And you'll see, yeah, the Washington Monument. Thank you, the Washington Monument. And you'll see the Potomac, right? And like if you're at the King Memorial, the Potomac is to your right. And if you're looking just perfectly at the entrance of the King Memorial, you'll see the Jefferson Memorial, right? It's beautiful. It's a lot of history. It's a lot of symbolism, right? But then there's some things that if you've read the Constitution, it becomes significant in how you view certain buildings. So when you view the White House, it's not as grand and big as you think it is. And then you view the Supreme Court, you're like, oh, that's the Supreme Court. And then when you view the Capitol, you like, well, damn, that's the government. Because it's huge. So of the three branches, the Capitol is the largest physical place of the three. when you're in Washington, D.C. The Capitol is huge. It is very commanding, right? It's very commanding. Kenji, this is not a political course. So if you're here for politics and all of that, please exit left. This is about our U.S. Constitution. Now, if you're here to learn, please stay. But otherwise, deuces. Hold on, something is going on with my phone. Okay, there we go. And then when you look at the White House, it's off to the side. The Supreme Court has not always been a Supreme Court like in its own building. It used to actually be a room in the Capitol. All right. It used to be a room in the Capitol. It's now its own place. But when you look at the Capitol, because my focus right now is Congress. So when you look at the Capitol, you see how commanding it is. The same way when you look at the Constitution, you continuously see references to the Congress. The Congress is at the Capitol. That's where Congress is housed, is at the Capitol. Yes, they have office buildings, like you have the Sam Rayburn, I want to say is the name, Senate building. Like you have your office buildings, but the actual Capitol, like okay. And I believe, just me being a little bit of a critical thinker, like that's interesting because they would have the biggest, because they seem to have the most influence, or at least it was written for them to have influence. The Congress, those employees of yours, because you're the employer as a voter. You're the employer. The problem is too many employers are not checking on their business, and they're not doing their rapid evaluations of their employees. So their employees continue to stay at work, and their employees start to do things going unchecked because the employers are not doing their primary and general duties. I hope that made sense to y'all. All right. So let's look at Article 5, because now we're back to what? We're back to the Congress again. So when we look at Article 5 is about amendments, and Congress has the power to legislate. An amendment is a form of legislation, okay? The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses, so 2/3 of the House of Representatives, 2/3 of the U.S. Senate, shall deem it necessary. So whenever both chambers of Congress deem it necessary, all right, they shall, so whenever both chambers, 2/3 of both chambers shall deem it necessary, they shall propose amendments to this Constitution. Again, my hand, the Constitution. This ring, an amendment. Okay? You get it? You have the Constitution, or Constitution. This glass, we're adding to it. This water is amending it. Okay? All right. Or on the application, legislate, lawmaking bodies. You have legislatures in your state. They're not called Congress. Only the Congress is called Congress. But what legislators do is legislate. They write laws. Or on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states. So we have 50 states. So 2/3 of the states shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which in either case shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of this Constitution when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states, or by conventions in 3/4 thereof, as the one or the other mode of ratification may be proposed by the Congress. Semicolon. I'm gonna stop at the semicolon. We're in Article 5. Now, you all should all have a copy of the Constitution. I told you where to get a copy from. All right. I'm going to stop there at the semicolon because we need to unpack some things. So Article 5 will be our next, where we start in our next class. So let's understand why we have these numbers. Okay. Let's understand why we have these numbers. So someone said 255 said the problem is the 2/3 and the 3/4 of Congress. It's to make sure that the people are being represented, not just a few. All right. Remember, it's not talking about one chamber or the other. It's talking about both. You're not represented by just one chamber. You're represented by both. Every one of us have 3 employees in Congress. Every one of us. Well, 255, you can't change anything because you choose not to. But we can if we're knowledgeable about what our power is. Okay. So if you're here just to be a naysayer, baby, you're in the wrong space. You're in the wrong space if you're here to be a naysayer and bring negativity, because that's not what this class is. You just probably need to stick around and learn and kick back some. And I know it's a lot to do, and sometimes it can be tiresome and it doesn't always feel good. But I need you to exhale and breathe and stop feeling overwhelmed. And let's strategize. And let's look again at history and how things have historically happened. Also, let's understand what is required to make things happen. Because if you don't know that, then of course you can't do anything. And of course, nothing will happen. So that's the purpose of us being here. Okay. I'll let you, matter of fact, you go ahead. Tell us what you want us to know. Strategize. 255. Come on, talk to us. Don't just throw blows, make a statement. Give some strategy then, 255. Yes, I'm entertaining a troll because I don't know if they're really trolling or if they're just frustrated. But give us something to work with, something substantial. Because right now, all you seem to have is negativity. Type. Type what you want to say. What is it? Type. How do you speak? The way you asking these questions and making these statements. Just type what it is. Oh, you want me to bring you on camera? Oh, we don't do that in here. This is not that. This is a class. It's class. So when I'm teaching my students outside of TikTok, like in the real formal classroom, and someone has a question or statement, I recognize them and I give them the floor. I'm giving you the floor. You don't get to come up to the podium. I'm at the podium. But you have the opportunity to express. Otherwise, it seems like you're here frustrated, and I understand the frustrations, but I'm asking you to be here to learn. Not another day, baby. You're either here to learn and engage, or you're here to distract? Okay, well, ask your question. See, now you're playing games. I've given you the floor. I've given you the floor. I'm going to do a commercial in a few minutes, y'all, to give y'all the information about the course. Because it's unfair to the other people. Oh, you're getting ready for a job interview. Well, I hope that goes well for you. Okay. $255. I hope that goes well for you today. We're going to move on. For those of you who are new to this space, this is federal government. Our textbook is the Constitution. I'm a government professor, political science professor, however you wanted to call it. But our primary source is the Constitution. That is the primary source of our government, is the U.S. Constitution. So in this course, that is the basis. We are not here to do anything else right now, but focus on what the Constitution provides and to show through examples how it's been applied and the application thereof, as well as how we as the people can influence government, and what happens when we influence government and what happens when we do not influence government. Okay, that is what this course is. Now, if you are liking this information, first I want to say thank you, but also I want to invite you to like, share, and follow, as well as if you go to my homepage here on TikTok, if you click on the YouTube page and subscribe there, you can catch the recordings for the previous classes and the future classes. Classes will generally be Thursdays at 11:20 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. They would generally last about 2.5 hours, sometimes a little longer, sometimes a little shorter. Next Thursday, I think I have to pivot. I'm covering a class for a colleague, and I think I need to check my schedule or check their schedule to see if it coincides with our class time. And if it does, I'll just move our class time to a different time of day on Thursday. I will keep it on Thursday. I'll just move it to a different time of day on Thursday. Okay. All right. So make sure you like, you follow, you share. I usually put the class time in the calendar. If you register for the class or you're interested in registering for the class, follow me on Instagram _the_pretty_professor, or on our YouTube page under the description, there's a link to a Google form, both on Instagram and on YouTube. And if you register for the class, make sure you use your proper email and you will receive the information for the course. All right. Someone said, what? Can we have a different time of day? Y'all got to work with my schedule. That's why I'm recording it, so that you'll have it if you can't make it live. I mean, I'm not going to come out of my softness and my rest. I'm doing the absolute most I can for you right now. Okay, so if you can't watch it live, catch the recording. All right, so we stopped at the semicolon there, and we'll pick up with the rest of it next week. So let's talk about why we have these 2/3 and 3/4 and all of that. One part is you want to make sure that a substantial amount of the representatives are in agreement, because that maximizes the amount of people's representation being fulfilled. Okay? That makes sense? It maximizes the potential amount of the people being represented. Some people want it to be majority. That can get sticky. I mean, real sticky. So having it more than half, it raises the stakes. It makes things, it allows for continuity to last, because otherwise we'll be constantly changing things. Now, this is my opinion. My opinion is that the Constitution as it is written right now the framework of it provides the opportunity for longevity. It's not so narrow that it causes stagnation, and it's not overly broad that all kind of foolishness can occur. It's kind of just right there in the middle, and that's why I believe the Constitution, as it is right now, and I'm talking about the 7 articles. I know y'all like the amendments. I love the amendments, but you need the Constitution in order to have the amendments. I can't put this ring on if it ain't no finger. Okay. I think that as it is right now, it gives us a good framework, a safe, not even safe is the wrong word, but it gives us a framework and a structure that is good. And if it wasn't good, then people wouldn't be trying to undermine it the way they are. And when I say undermine it, they're not doing it forward facing, right? They want to destroy it so that they can destroy the union and this democracy, right? This Republican Union that provides us our democracy. All right. So I hope that reaches you all. Okay. So a couple of things as we prepare for next week's class. Make sure you read Article 5 in its entirety. All right. We are going to have something during spring break. I do want to introduce you to another book. I told you that at the beginning of class. That book is Devil in the Grove by Gilbert King. Devil in the Grove by Gilbert King. And so we're going to finish with a quick mini lecture, right? To talk about kind of about this book, but more so about the topic. At the beginning of class, I gave you a website. Let me pull that back up for those on YouTube who may just have joined us after the beginning of class. So that website is eji.org, EJI, the Equal Justice Initiative. The Equal Justice Initiative is an organization in Montgomery, Alabama. It consists of their home office, a museum, and a memorial site, right? In Montgomery, Alabama. Now, I could go all the way in talking about EJI, but I invite you to look it up yourself. All right. I invite you to look it up yourself. But the reason why I'm highlighting it is because the work that they do at EJI is legacy work. And what I mean by legacy work, it's advocacy. It is work that changes lives for the better, impacts communities, as well as helps us understand historical significance. Okay. So the book is Devil in the Grove by Gilbert King. This is a Pulitzer award-winning book. Mine is personally signed by the author. But Devil in the Grove is about 4 young men who were accused of essaying a woman in Florida back in the 40s. It focuses on their cases, their trials, their unalivings. Yes, there were some unalivings. Their attempted unalivings. Yes, one survived. It's a really heavy read. It's an emotional read, and it's a read about where I'm from. It's about Central Florida. I recommend that you all read this. Most people don't think of Florida as a place where a lot of lynchings and violence happen, and that is unfortunate. People don't realize that about Florida because you just think beaches, palm trees, and their little mouse, and maybe oranges, but it's so much more to it. So read this. But it also highlights Thurgood Marshall. Thurgood Marshall was the attorney who defended them. On the cover, the guy on the cover is Sheriff McCall, Willis McCall. He was the sheriff of Lake County, which is the scene where this case arises. But Thurgood Marshall is who I want to talk about today. Thurgood Marshall was an attorney. He's from Baltimore originally. He attended Howard. That's where he went to law school. But Thurgood Marshall, how can I put it? Thurgood Marshall was not your typical, like, he was a lot of a renegade, like in his earliest years, his formative years as an attorney. He wasn't demure. He wasn't how I would say the establishment or those with influence. He did not necessarily behave or present the way they would want someone to present. He was much more so himself. And I can relate to that because sometimes people want me to just put on this act, and I'm just me. Like, I'm gonna give you the real. I might be a bit awkward, but I can be a whole bunch of things. You can say a lot of things about me, but what you can't say is that the passion is not there and the knowledge is not there. And I am packaged in a way that is palatable for the people who need me, not for the people who think they don't need me. And and I see a lot of that as I learn more about Thurgood Marshall. Now, I would say Thurgood Marshall is the reason why I went to law school. He and Willie Gary. If you never heard of Willie Gary is one of the biggest civil attorneys. Notice I said civil attorneys in the United States. You have criminal attorneys, you have civil attorneys. He was, or he is, Willie Gary was someone that I met as a child, and I was just enamored by him. So between him and Thurgood Marshall, they are the reason why I went to law school. I mean, what did I read or listen to learn more about him? Books, lectures. I mean, as a child, I didn't have YouTube. Like, I didn't grow up in the 21st century. So as a child, I had books and I read a lot of books. And, we had documentaries. Like, today you have YouTube, you have Google. I would recommend you Googling Thurgood Marshall and Willie Gary and watch documentaries about them, watch 60-minute episodes, watch whatever videos are available that I would say that come from constructive sources, like educational sources, PBS. Those would be the places I would start, or certain foundations. But I also would look to books. So are there any biographies? Did they ever write their own? Are there newspaper articles? That's how you learn about people. Yeah, we had encyclopedias. We had the World Book Encyclopedia. We had the Britannica. So, yeah. Kenji, I gave you a chance. Goodbye, beloved. Okay. Thank you, Tamara, for writing their names. So we got Willie Gary and we have Thurgood Marshall. So with and the third one I would name to this list would be Bryan Stevenson. That's Stevenson with a V. Bryan Stevenson, and that's Bryan, Bryan. He is the founder and director of, I don't know if he's the director, but he started EJI. He started the Equal Justice Initiative. All right. So there's a movie called Just Mercy. So I'm not sure who just asked me the question about how to learn about these people. So I'll give you the example. There's a movie called Just Mercy starring Michael B. Jordan and Jamie Foxx. Jamie Foxx was a guy who was in prison. Michael B. Jordan was the attorney. The person who he portrays is Bryan Stevenson. So that's a movie that you can start with to begin learning about Bryan Stevenson. Okay. Bryan Stevenson has a TED Talk, like this pen, TED Talk, right? But those would be 3 names that I recommend that you go out and learn about because of the work they do or did around protecting and helping people. Bryan Stevenson and Thurgood Marshall, they defended people. Willie Gary, his work was in making sure people were paid for damages done to them. Okay. So there's a movie, I forget who played did Jamie Foxx play Willie Gary in that Willie Gary movie that just came out? I can't remember who plays Willie Gary. I want to say it is Jamie Foxx. The Burial, yeah. So Jamie Foxx plays Willie Gary in The Burial. So if you want to be introduced to Willie Gary, The Burial would be a good place to start. So Willie Gary is, he's from Florida. Is he from South Carolina or Florida? He lives in Florida. I know that for sure. But I want to say he's from South Carolina. Okay. And then the last person I want to give you is Attorney Benjamin Crump. Benjamin Crump, he's in the middle of both sides. So he doesn't defend people criminally, but he does pursue justice for people who've been wrongfully accused. But that's not really his wheelhouse. His wheelhouse is more so making sure that families and people who've been harmed get what they deserve for the harm done to them in pursuit of justice. Why am I saying these names? Why am I invoking these names? Because they're important. They're important. The work that they do is important. You have to hold people, organizations, agencies, various governmental bodies accountable for the harms that are caused by them. Okay. So back to Thurgood Marshall though, right? So Thurgood Marshall was boisterous, but he was a brilliant attorney, a brilliant advocate. And he was an advocate during a time where I think it's always dangerous to be an advocate. Matter of fact, I know it's always dangerous to be an advocate, even biblically, because never mind, I don't even have to tell you. Because, you know, advocates have been getting killed or threatened to be killed since forever. Okay. And so none of the people I've named have lived a life without threats on their lives or their lives being taken because of the work that they've done. Like, well, none of them have died from it, but they've all been threatened because of the work that they've done. Okay. But when it comes to Thurgood Marshall, he was the attorney for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund at a time where lynchings were just out of this world. And so there used to be a flag that would be hung, a man was lynched today, you know. He was around during a time where if you go in to defend someone of a crime, such as the Groveland boys, your life might have been threatened, right? You might have to sleep with your shoes on in case you have to wake up in the middle of the night and run and get in the car to get away, because that was the times that they were in. Thurgood Marshall, because I want people to know things, because I always hear on social media, well, they didn't teach me that in school. And my response to that is and will always be, but they taught you how to read. So open a book or open a website and read and learn. So Thurgood Marshall, after he argued more cases in front of the Supreme Court than any other attorney. Okay, he argued more cases in front of the Supreme Court than any other attorney. He's famously known as the lead attorney in the case of Brown versus the Board of Education for Topeka, Kansas. So if you were here at the beginning of the video, you've watched it to this point. If you're watching the replay, you'll remember that I spoke about, because someone asked me what documentaries I was watching. And I was saying that I'm going back, learning about the other families, the other plaintiffs associated with certain class action suits, particularly Brown versus Board of Education. Because when you look at the style on a lawsuit, you usually see et al, E-T-A-L. So it means and others. So it means and others. So the other plaintiffs besides the Browns were families from Delaware, from Virginia, and South Carolina. And so he represented them all. So to make the case stronger for this effort, it was better to include all these groups. Brown was the lead name. Okay. So Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas is a case about separate but equal. All right. Melendez versus Westminster, that California federal case, was about separate but equal. Separate but equal comes from the 1896 Supreme Court decision of Plessy versus Ferguson, where the Supreme Court ruled that things needed to be divided based on race. So they were separate, but they were equal. But we know they were not equal. They were said to be equal, but they were not equal. Okay. Just because I give you a book does not mean it's equal if a lot of the pages are torn out, right? It's not equal. You still have a book, but a lot of the pages are missing, right? So that's not equal. And so with the schools, separate but equal, they weren't getting the same physical conditions in the schools. They weren't given the same materials. The pay for the educators weren't the same. The desks weren't the same. The technology wasn't the same. So separate but equal, the court would later rule in 1954 with the Brown decision that separate but equal was inherently unequal, thus reversing the initial ruling of 1896 with Plessy versus Ferguson, where that concept was established through law, right? Through the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court rulings become law. We have Congress and our state legislatures that can make laws. So laws are legislated, or they come through the courts, through court decisions. So we're very much still in the Constitution right now. I'm just giving you a travel through Thurgood Marshall. Thurgood Marshall, his success with Brown just catapulted him. He later was appointed as Solicitor General for the United States. So he went from private practice to being the Solicitor General for the United States. So Solicitor General, I want you to write that in the chat. And I'm going to write that on, what's this? On YouTube, Solicitor General. I got my phone in front of my computer. Okay. So Solicitor General argues on behalf of the federal government in the Supreme Court. Okay. And after he was Solicitor General, he would later be, in 1967, he was appointed as an Associate Justice on the U.S. Supreme Court, becoming the first non-white man to serve on the U.S. Supreme Court. So civil rights attorney, Solicitor General, to U.S. Supreme Court Justice, Thurgood Marshall. So he served on the U.S. Supreme Court from 1967 to 1991, when he retired in 1991. Okay, everybody got that? Thurgood Marshall. All right. So how many of you knew he was Solicitor General? Did any of y'all know that he had once served as Solicitor General? Okay, cool. All right, got a couple of people who knew that. He also he influenced a generation of lawyers. Let me just put that. Now, I won't even say a generation. He influenced generations of lawyers, because when you can see yourself, like when you can see, like literally see someone that looks like you or comes from what you come from, it does remind you that things are possible for you too. All right. It reminds you that things are possible for you too. Okay. Now, I want to connect two of the cases that I mentioned. I mentioned Brown versus Board of Education, and I mentioned Melendez versus Westminster. Melendez versus Westminster is a federal case out of the state. And I keep saying Mendez versus Westminster is a case out of California. Let me put that on the screen. It's a case out of California that preceded that came before Brown. Okay, versus Westminster. All right. So it came before Brown versus the Board of Education, but Brown was already in the works. It was already a case in the works. It just was not, it just had not gotten to the Supreme Court yet. But Mendez, because I believe Thurgood Marshall actually wrote like a memo or a brief on behalf of the plaintiffs and Mendez, like in support, basically a plea to the court, to that federal court out in California, the importance of ruling in favor of the Mendez family and those plaintiffs in that case. But here's something I want to show you about how significant Thurgood Marshall's influence is. So Mendez, that case was also about separate but equal, right? Mendez, they win in the federal court, in the district court, right? So with the federal courts, Article 3, with the federal courts, we have our district courts, our appellate courts, and the Supreme Court, okay? And so after the court ruled in favor of Mendez, the governor of California, his name was Earl Warren, EARL WARREN. Now, if you've heard of Earl Warren, most of you probably did not hear of him as have being the governor of California. You know, he was governor of California in the 40s. He would later be appointed, I forget which president, but he would be appointed as the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And I think Truman, I don't know if it's Eisenhower or who, let me see, who appointed Earl? Eisenhower. I knew it was Truman or Eisenhower, one of them. So Dwight Eisenhower appointed Earl Warren as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Now, before I talk about him as Chief Justice, I want to talk about him as governor. So he was governor of California when the Mendez decision was made. And so as governor, he took it further. He had the law established that got rid of separate but equal in California schools. Okay. So in California, Earl Warren was the governor that oversaw the ending of separate but equal in California schools. then Eisenhower appoints him as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Now, when someone gets appointed as Chief Justice, it's because the Chief Justice has either died or retired. Okay, that's it. When someone gets appointed to the Supreme Court just as a justice, which we call associate justice, but as a justice, they are appointed because someone has either retired or passed away. Okay, that's how seats are filled. And we talked about like why people should retire when they know that they should probably retire under a president whose philosophy aligns with them more if they seek to maintain a continuum of similarity in terms of, and it is not just Ruth. I know y'all like to beat up on Ruth. I mean, I go in on her too, but it's not just Ruth. Okay. Because what's not guaranteed is that the Senate is going to be in place to hold up progress as it was in 2020 when Justice Scalia passed. Okay. Scalia. Okay. When Justice Scalia passed in 2020, similarly, it's around this time. Okay. It's around this time of year. I don't remember the exact date. And I know that Justice Scalia. Yeah, it was today in 2016. I said 2020. I always mess that up. In 2016. So as Obama was leaving office in 2016. So it was 9 years ago today, Justice Scalia died. Okay, 9 years ago today, Justice Scalia died. And it wouldn't be until April of 2017 when Neil Gorsuch would be confirmed to the U.S. Supreme Court. Okay. They weren't breaking the rules, Xavier. They were using the rules because they knew the rules. And that's why I teach this class, because if you know the rules, that means you know what's not in the rules. That means you know the power, and that means you hold the power and you wield the power to work in your favor. So what they did wasn't illegal. It didn't break the rules. It was dirty, but I mean, hey. All right. Denise, this is a government class. We talk about federal government, particularly and in general, the U.S. Constitution. It's not an unwritten rule, Xavier. Xavier, position your brain and your mind to be open to learn, not to argue, but to learn. I know Mitch McConnell refused. That's what I just said. The Senate. Senator Mitch McConnell was the majority leader of the U.S. Senate when this happened, when Justice Scalia passed, and when President Obama wanted to appoint Merrick Garland as the next U.S. Supreme Court justice. In order for a president to have his or her appointee confirmed to cabinet positions or to the federal bench, whether it's the Supreme Court or any other court, it requires, let me make sure my phone is charging. It requires the Senate to hold hearings. Give me 1 second. I want to make sure my phone is charging. It requires the Senate to hold hearings. Mitch McConnell refused to hold the hearings, right? Mitch McConnell refused to hold the hearings. Okay, sorry, I was just making sure my phone was charging. Mitch McConnell, as majority, he refused to hold the hearings. That's not an unwritten rule. It's a part of the process. The Senate has to hold the hearing, the confirmation hearing. If the Senate does not hold the confirmation hearing, then the confirmation hearing doesn't happen. That's the power of voting. That's why it's important that we actively vote out people, or what I like to say, fire people, right? And hire new people. But when our voting populace is uneducated, unknowledgeable about the power that they hold, then we become relaxed. When we only come out for presidential elections because we think all the power is in the president, so we only vote every 4 years instead of voting every 2 years, regardless, then we miss the primaries. The primaries are when we nominate people for the general election. And so we miss our opportunity to get rid of people that are incumbents who are not working on our behalf. So you're not wrong in your understanding in full, but you're missing the point of the lecture right now. And I just want to make sure that you're on it. Okay. So hopefully you're open to the learning, and I can get back to talking about Earl Warren. And we're going to talk about local politics later, you guys. We're talking federal government. That's the course, federal government. All right. Federal. Okay. And all elections happen locally. So that comment is correct. Okay. All elections happen locally. Now, in our last video, we talked about how the role of the county clerk. County clerks play a huge role. All right. County clerks, they are the keepers of the records. For most places, they also oversee the elections. Okay. So, all right. So, yes, those are the confirmation hearings. So back to Earl Warren, who was appointed by Dwight Eisenhower. Earl Warren becomes Chief Justice during the Eisenhower administration. Earl Warren, who we already have somewhat of a taste of where his philosophy aligns in some areas, right, as related to separate but equal. We now understand because we saw what he's done in California. And this is us looking retrospectively, right? He becomes Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and then lands Brown in his court. So someone said it earlier, the Warren Court. The Warren Court is significant to what is known as the civil rights movement, is significant to many decisions and laws that will come down from the court that apply to the rights of people in the United States today. Let me go to the comments on YouTube and I'm gonna come back to this. Yes, Nikki, how we talked about Amy Coney Barrett last week and Ruth Bader Ginsburg, right? So who has the power makes the decision in Congress. That's why I keep talking about congressional powers. Okay. So yes, absolutely, Nikki. Right, Nikki, you're on point. You're on point. Absolutely. Okay. Nikki said for you to go watch Schoolhouse Rock if he doesn't get to learn about the 3 branches of government. I love that, Schoolhouse Rock. Girl, you better bring it up. All right. So Earl Warren, or the Warren Court, is responsible for a lot of decisions that we have been able to embrace today. Cases such as, I mentioned some marriage cases earlier. One of those cases, Loving versus Virginia, that happened under the Warren Court in 1967. Shortly after that decision, one of the justices was no longer on the court and a new justice was appointed. That new justice who was appointed by Lyndon Baines Johnson, former U.S. Senator from the state of Texas, who became president after the unaliving of JFK, John F. Kennedy. Thurgood Marshall was appointed to the Supreme Court, becoming the first Black Supreme Court justice. Now, prior to him joining the court, the decision of Loving versus Virginia was made. Loving versus Virginia is about Mildred and Richard Loving. She was black, he was white. They lived in Virginia. They wanted to be married. Virginia refused to marry them, so they traveled to Washington, D.C., got married, and went back home to Virginia. They were threatened that they needed to leave and stay gone 25 years or they would be put in jail. And I'm just giving you a quick synopsis. Mildred was like, that's my man. That's my husband. That's my baby daddy. Like, we're going to be together. I don't know why y'all got this stupid law. I'm going to do something about it. So what she did about it was she knew Robert Kennedy was the Attorney General for the United States. So she wrote him a letter. So I tell y'all, we have power, but we don't use it. It's bigger than just voting. You know, you never know who's going to open up a letter and send you a message. Now, it could have been Robert Kennedy himself, or it could have been a staffer. We will never know. But nevertheless, she wrote the letter, and the response that supposedly came from Robert F. Kennedy was like, girl, I can't take this case, but here go 2 lawyers that could help you, right? And so he referred them to 2 attorneys. These attorneys said, yes, we'll take on this case. And they fought the state of Virginia. Because they were suing a state, that case was automatically going to be a case that would be considered, that would be qualified. Let me make sure I say this right. That would be qualified to be considered. That would be qualified to be considered for being heard by the Supreme Court. Every year, thousands of cases are sent to the Supreme Court asking to be heard. Only a small percentage of those cases are granted by the Supreme Court. Only a very few of the thousands that are pleaded, hey, please hear this case, this issue, they only select a few. So they saw this lawsuit against the state of Virginia. They were like, yeah, we'll hear this case. That case goes before the Supreme Court, the Warren Court, and the Warren Court decides unanimously in favor of Loving versus Virginia, ruling that marriage was a fundamental right. That is established through Loving versus Virginia. Shortly thereafter, Marshall joins the Warren Court. Okay, so there's some little history there. I'm not telling you everything, but I'm giving you some framework so that you can do your Googles, your searches, whatever search engine you use, and you can go out and learn more, maybe grab some books about some of these people and cases that I'm mentioning. Another case that came through the Warren Court was Griswold versus Connecticut. Now, this case is different from any of the other cases I've discussed, with the exception of it also being a marriage case. Griswold versus Connecticut is a case. It's a case about marriage dealing with contraceptives. And the reason why I like to talk about this is because you never know how crazy laws can be until you hear about why they're no longer in existence. So Connecticut did not allow for people to use contraceptives in marriage. It was illegal for married people to use contraceptives. And so the Griswold sued. Okay. And the court ruled that people in marriages should be able to use contraceptives. Just because I'm married, I mean, we're trying to conceive right now. Look at the wows. Yeah. All right. And thank you, Jazz, for posting that. Let me pin it. How do I pin it? I always mess this up. There we go. So that is, we learned something new today. All right. So we have 3 marriage cases, one about contraceptives in marriages, one about interracial marriages. And then last week we learned about, I think we talked about last week we learned about same-sex marriage. That was a 2015 case. Now, unlike these other 2, that case was decided 5-4. Okay, that case is decided 5-4. Oberfeld versus Hodges. So the likelihood of that being overturned is, it's been in place nearly 10 years. It was passed in 2015, in June of 2015. It's now 2025. We talked about how when the Supreme Court makes a decision, it's the law of the land. All right. So as of right now, that is legal. If you approach these things by being in people's bedroom and in their drawers, then of course you're going to come to the same conclusion. But if you approach it as people want to be married to the person that they love, then you'll draw another conclusion. Like, why do you even care? You ain't in it. Like, how does it hurt you? How does it harm you? Why are you in a bedroom? That's what I want to ask. Now, something else I want to suggest, and I'm too lazy to go get the step and climb up there and grab the book. But if you can read biographies or autobiography about Lyndon Baines Johnson, Lyndon Baines Johnson is someone, there's a lot to be said about LBJ, but LBJ, just if you can, learn more about LBJ. Now, if you only get stuck on the conspiracy about him becoming president in those circumstances, then you're missing the point I'm making. Okay? But learn about LBJ and his tactics to get legislation passed. Okay? Yes, Lyndon Baines Johnson, or Lyndon Johnson. Okay? Yes, Lyndon Johnson. He was a lot of things. All right? A lot of things. I think it's significant learning about presidents, learning about former justices. I think it's important. Now, if you, like, people write autobiographies and memoirs, I really don't care to read a celebrity's memoir, but an elected official, I probably want to read that because there's probably some stuff in there that can shed some light on some things and give me some perspective about how governments, the inner workings and the philosophies and ideologies and the reason why someone could have a philosophy, but they're seeing a bigger picture. And so their decision is made based on the bigger picture that the world can't necessarily see because the world doesn't have privy to that information. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. It is beautiful. I love that picture too. That's why I shoot here in front of this portrait, this painting. It is amazing. So thank you. So I think that's it for today. It has been a long class. Hopefully you've been enriched. I will entertain some questions, but I am ready to go so that I can get ready for lunch. Okay. Are there any questions? Thank you. Thank you so much. Y'all make sure you follow, but make sure y'all subscribe to the YouTube because I ain't gonna make no money over here on TikTok because, baby, I don't know how they do it. Folks be talking about their checks and stuff. Y'all have to send me an email, tell me what the game is to do that. And then I probably still ain't gonna have the time or the patience because I'm an 8-hour sleeper. Like, I'm gonna be up all night. But help me out, subscribe to the YouTube. Make sure you share, like, share, and follow. Also, make sure you share the YouTube links. So if you're a friend or somebody isn't on TikTok and you want them to have this information, just like you subscribe to the YouTube, you share this link, the YouTube link, with them so that they too can get this information. Shout out to everyone who's new in this space. Thank you so much for following and for joining us today. I hope this was rich for you. These are our 2 books that have been mentioned, right? Framed and Devil in the Grove. They both focus on people wrongfully accused and give us real examples. These are nonfiction books. So yeah, are there any questions? Perfect. You got a screenshot. Good. Interracial marriage was decided by the U.S. Supreme Court in 1967 in the case of Loving versus Virginia. And you can watch the replay of this video, Emperor, if you click the YouTube link on my page. It is the week 3 U.S. Constitution video. That's the title of it. All right. I'm going to get better with these trolls and these distractors. I am. But I'm just like, what would I say if they were here in real life? Like, not that it's not real life, but if they were actually in a physical classroom, it would be the same thing. Like, if you don't get all right, what do I think about the movie What Makes a Family, starring Brooke Shields? It's about same-sex marriage. I've never seen the movie. So what makes a family? I'm writing it down, so if I get a chance, I'll watch it. But I got some writing and reading to do in preparation for Sunday. So I'm a little busy, so I can't take on any new movies because I'm already like overload with documentaries and books in preparation for Sunday. We can go comments off until question time. We're on question time now. Oh, we can do that? Oh, you were telling me comments off. Ooh. And assign moderators. Okay. Yeah, I'm writing this down. So is there a place I can like learn how to do that? Oh, Jenny. Walter, don't be laughing at me. So I'll just make sure that I see familiar faces and names. And then, so if I make you a moderator, just kind of help me because I'm gonna be looking for the familiar names, or, you know, I know who's regular in here. And that will help us on YouTube because we don't have those type of distractions on YouTube. So when I start going off, I know they'd be like, well, damn. And then, so moderators would help, but the comments off, that would help too. Also go live from studio instead of from TikTok directly. Okay, because usually I just go from TikTok directly, so I can use studio to go live. Okay, that makes perfect sense. Thank you all so much. Okay, thank you, Nikki, for that information. Valerie, yes, we will continue next week with Article 5, so make sure you read Article 5. Yes. And 6 and 7, we're going to go quick. So we should be in the amendments by the last week of February. All right. So what's that, the 27th? By the 27th, we should be at the amendment. So I really get to dig into Amendment 1. We'll do Amendment 2. Like, we'll really get into them. All right. What else? We'll do Amendments 1 and 2 probably together, 3 and 4 together. I'll probably try to group them so we can get through them quick. Anything else? Any questions? I love this. I appreciate you all. This has been a great class today. I thank you for your time and your commitment. I'm very mindful of your time. So I will do my best to get rid of the distractors so that we can keep our flow. But next week, I will, whatever video I make next, like just regular video on TikTok, it'll let you know what time class is because I'm going to get with my colleague to see what time those classes are I need to cover for him next week. And then I will just move our time for next Thursday. I'll like change the time of our class for next Thursday. All right. So no questions. Yes, Katie Corner, go back and watch 2 We're on 3 now. So this is 3. So just once this video ends, you can literally, hey Raven, hey Pookie, that's my sister, love you. Go back to this video and just rewatch it because it'll be here as soon as this ends. YouTube is on my homepage here on TikTok. Just hit the YouTube link and it will take you to Pretty Petty Politics. No other questions? Well, again, today has been rich. We're going to pick up with Article 5 next week. My next video on TikTok, and no matter what I'm talking about, I'm going to make sure I say when our next government class is, and I will also put a calendar in there so you can register for the class. Like, it'll be on that calendar, and I'll be sure to attach it so it appears on all my posts that I have a live schedule. So yeah. All right, so there are no questions. It looks like we are done here at 1:08, and I can go eat. I can go have lunch. Yeah, because I still ain't want to get these eyebrows done. I'm going today. I did not make it last Friday, but I'm definitely going because I'm not going home and my mama be talking about me and my eyebrows because, child, she be on our heads. All right. Peace out. Y'all be good. Thank you, YouTube. Make sure you subscribe.